Welcome to Parashat Vayigash. In this week's parasha, which starts with the biggest cliffhanger ever in the entire Torah almost. Yehuda battles for the life of him and his brothers and says to Yosef, you cannot take Binyamin as a slave, because if you do that, our father, who's already lost one son, will die. And it's at that moment, Yosef steps out of the facade and says, Ani Yosef ha'od avichai, I am Yosef, your brother. Is my father still alive? He forgives his brothers, and after a whole series of events, sends his brothers back to Canaan to bring down his father to Egypt. But before doing that, he presents each of his brothers with a series of different gifts. Lekulam natan la'ish chalifot smalot. To each of his brothers he gave different sets of clothing. But Binyamin natan 300 kesef vechamesh chalifot semanot. But to his brother Binyamin, he goes ahead and he gives him 300 pieces of silver and 5 sets of clothing. The Talmud in Megillah comes along and asks a very powerful question. Yikashel bo. Yosef is going to stumble in the very same area. Bishvil mishkal shne saraim milah sheosif Yaakov Yosef, because of the 2 selah of fine wool that Yaakov gave to Yosef by favoring him over all the other brothers and giving him that coat of many colors. Because of that, all the resentment took place between him and his brothers and resulted in him ending up in Egypt. So how could it be? How could it be that Yosef, a victim of jealousy, provoked his brothers by favoring his younger brother over everyone else? Jealousy was the cause of the original hate. Why didn't he learn from the past not to show favoritism? And the Talmud gives a fascinating answer. Amar Rabbi Binyamin bar Yefet, Remez Ramazlo. Yosef was calculated in his actions, and he was, so to speak, showing them a sign that there would be a descendant that was destined to issue from Binyamin himself in the future, who would go out from the presence of a king in the future. That king was King Achashverosh. When Mordechai, a descendant of Binyamin, miraculously would rise to power after being saved from the gallows, he will leave King Achashverosh's palace, gifted with 5 different changes of clothing. As the Megillah says, Mordechai yasa bilvush machot techelet, etc., etc. Binyamin's 5 changings of clothing were symbolic of a future gift that his descendant would receive. The problem is that Yosef doesn't explain to his brothers what's going on over here. He doesn't say this is a whole symbolic gesture of a future event that's going to happen in the Jewish world. And just because it was symbolic, would that still create positive or more likely create negative feelings? So why does Yosef, in the midst of this incredible revelation to his brothers, decide to give a gift to one brother over all of the others because of an event that's destined to take place 1,000 years in the future? Surely there was a better time to do this. Rabbi Pesach Krohn, in one of his books, tells a story that in 1939, when the Gestapo closed down the yeshiva of Rav Moshe Schneider in Frankfurt, Germany, with support from our people in the UK, he was able to relocate the school to England. Now, survival during that horrific period was both a tremendous physical and spiritual challenge. But there were 2 boys in the yeshiva, both called Moshe, who stepped up. One Moshe would get up early in the morning, pick up all the leftover bread from a very generous bakery and schlep it, carrying bags of breads and rolls through the bitter cold winters in England, which was not easy. But he never missed his duties. The other Moshe also woke up early and led a special learning session well before dawn, encouraging the other students to join him. And after years of uninterrupted efforts, the boys got public recognition. Rabbi Schneider blessed them in front of the entire school. And he said the following: Moshe, who schleps the bread, is not only schlepping the bread of today, but one day he will distribute thousands of bread to thousands of people. And Moshe, who is concerned today for the spirituality of others, will continue to do so in many years to come. Their actions today are only the seeds of the future. And his words proved true. Moshe, the bread schlepper, became Moshe or Paul Reichman, one of the most benevolent philanthropists of our time. And Moshe, the young teacher, became Rav Moshe Sternbach, rabbi in South Africa, and then rabbi in Haranoff in Israel, a prolific writer on halakha and Jewish law, teacher to thousands. Mordechai Kamenetsky suggests that maybe what Yosef is telling us over here is the secret of our people. Moments earlier, where Binyamin is standing in shackles and chains, he's accused as a thief, he's humiliated and sentenced to life imprisonment to King Paro. And within moments, he's liberated and he's catapulted to huge honor, identified as being the blood brother, both from the father and the mother, of the most powerful men in the then known world. Yosef goes ahead and gives this boy a special fivefold gift. And he makes an announcement to the world. He declares the destiny of his people. And Yosef is making a declaration through Binyamin that today's events are our clear destiny. Because of the courageous acts of Yehuda, Binyamin walks away not only with one change of clothing, but with 5 changes of clothing. It was a symbolism not of thousands of years to come, but rather a symbolism of the ever-present character of the Jewish people. Friends, those events of Binyamin in Egypt parallel themselves in almost direct comparison with events that are going to occur many years later in Persia. Mordechai HaYehudi, a descendant of Binyamin, stands his ground under the greatest threats of death and humiliation. He defies the prophets of doom, and he walks away with great honor and glory. Yosef's message was not a riddle. It was not an illusion. It wasn't some mystical prophecy. It was our destiny. And the destiny was this: that courage in difficult and challenging and trying times will always yield greatness. It was not just a message for the future. It was a message of the future for today. And that was the message all the brothers could appreciate at that very moment. And I think it's a message that we can appreciate right now as well. Shabbat Shalom.